Okay, thank you, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you for Lindo for inviting me. I'm Tom St. George. I've been living in Mexico the last 12 years, and I've been doing a lot of photography in the caverns, the cenotes, and the caves of Mexico. And about 7 years ago, I bought a proper camera, underwater housing. And I just got obsessed with shooting the light beams and the light that we find in the cenotes in Mexico. It's, in some ways, a very easy environment to shoot in. We have very calm water, no waves. We have really good visibility all of the time. And we get these incredible light beams. So I like to incorporate the light beams in my images. I like to incorporate the cenote entrance, and also we can see through the jungle above. It is actually surprisingly quite a low light environment. Although we have these light beams, obviously the cenote, there's only light coming in through the entrance. And so we're pushing the camera settings quite hard. I tend to really drag the shutter to shoot at really quite slow shutter speeds, which takes some technique. You need to be fairly stable in the water. You need to have pretty good buoyancy. What helps is to take multiple images. So you might have camera shake or the subject's motion blur from the subject in some of the images, but you'll get, out of 3 or 4 or 5 images, you're going to get 1 or 2 that are really sharp. There is also, particularly for the sinkhole type cenotes, there is a time of the year when it's best to shoot those. In midsummer, when the sun is really high in the sky and overhead, we get the maximum light penetration with the light beam reaching all the way down to the bottom of the pit. But we also need to be aware a little bit that kind of June gets really busy, and we're going to have lots of divers in the pit in June. So I tend to do my shots in the pit around May, where we still have really good light. We have pretty good weather, but we don't have quite so many divers. And it might look like we've had the cenote all to ourselves here, but we were actually waiting around in the car park, waiting between the morning dives and the afternoon dives and people coming and going, but also wanting to get that time window around noon when we get the best light. And there's actually 2 other teams, guided cenote divers, 3 or 4 divers in each group, but I just waited until they're both behind or above me and out of the frame, and it makes it look like we've got the cenote all to ourselves. This is another shot of the pit, also ambient light, so no strobes. It's very low light, although we have the sunbeams coming in. It's a really high ISO image. You can tell by the strength of the diver's light beams how little ambient light there is. So again, we're dragging the shutter. We can't go too slow because we have divers moving in the frame. We're opening up the aperture much more than we probably would for shooting in open water, where we generally want to shoot around f8 or higher. And pushing the ISO as high as it needs to be, basically. So we're making compromises to get that image. Another great way to shoot is from within the cavern zone, shooting out towards the entrance, right? We have these amazing light beams. Ambient light, again, no strobes. We get the silhouette of the diver. And this image is actually just similar to the technique that Pete was talking about. It's multiple images shot in a portrait and stitched together. So it's 4 or 5 images that were shot in a portrait orientation. And that ends up giving us a really, really super high-res image that can be printed really large for banners and things like that. The local knowledge is really important because different times of year are when different cenotes really shine. So towards the end of the rainy season, we have lots of water sitting in the jungles. It's soaking up tannins from leaf litter, twigs, and all that stuff. And if we get more rains, it washes into the cenotes. And some of the cenotes have pretty low flow, and that water can just sit there. So you need to have kind of that local knowledge of knowing which are the best times to go to which cenotes. And again, this is really super low light now because that tannic water is not letting much light through. It's filtering the light. It's only letting green light through. So we're pushing the camera settings quite hard. And if you get really lucky, and the water's been sitting in the jungle for a long time, and then we get more rain, you get lots and lots and lots of tannins washing into the river, into the cenote, and it stains it this beautiful red color. So it's like basically a giant cup of tea. You know, you put a giant tea bag in the cenote, and it's sucked up all this color. And again, really super low light. You can tell by the brightness of the diver's primary light just how low the ambient light is. Another cenote, this is another sinkhole cenote, but it's very different from the first two I showed you. This is Cenote Angelita. It has kind of a murky, the first 2 or 3 meters at the surface are fairly murky, which kind of filters and softens the light. And we have a cloud of hydrogen sulfide at the bottom here, which is reflecting light. So we get this beautiful light that's wrapping around everything. You can see the shadow of the diver is very diffuse. Again, this is an totally ambient light shot. We're shooting from reasonably far away, so on-camera strobes would not have much effect. So it's more, I treat these more as kind of a landscape photography. And again, shooting fairly low shutter speeds and pushing the camera quite hard. Another shot from the pit. This is without the sunbeams. This is later in the day after we lose those sunbeams. This is shot right from the back of the pit, where the cave entrance to the deeper sections of the pit, the Huacula Room, one of the deeper sections of cave we have in Mexico, and just gives you a sense of scale of the cenote. And you can see it also has the hydrogen sulfide cloud, and we also have a halocline here. There's the fresh water sitting above, which we've got this kind of glowy effect, and it's salt water, everything below that. And again, super low light, really, really shooting. Because the diver's far away, I can shoot at 1/15th of a second, something like that. So really trying to let as much light into the camera as possible. But also we get, pretty bright stuff, shooting the sunbeams. Unfortunately, this cenote, they don't allow you to take cameras anymore. And using on-camera strobes in that kind of more traditional way we would in the ocean, to add fill light, to bring back the colors, to light up our divers. And so it's more of a balanced light photo. And local knowledge, once again, I'm very lucky. My partner, Julia, my spouse, she's a cave instructor now, but she worked for many years as a cenote guide, so she knows all of the cenotes intimately. She knows the best time of year. In the winter months, at a certain time of day, this is a little cenote that's on the route of a cavern dive, so people don't come in here, but you pass by this cenote. And in the winter months, certain time of day, you get the light beam reaching all the way down this slope. This slope is like 45 degrees. So it's a little bit like Indiana Jones' Temple of Doom, where the certain time of year, certain time of day, the light beam reaches to the bottom. And again, at the pit, you can see the light beam is coming all the way down to the 30 meters. If you can imagine, you wouldn't really get that in the ocean. The water is really, really, really clear. Cenote Car Wash, pretty well-known dive site. So we're using on-camera strobes to bring out the color of the lilies and to light up our diver. I've positioned the diver in front of the sun, so we're getting a little bit of a sunball on our diver. And again, shooting up through the water. I like to shoot up towards the surface, incorporate some of the jungle and the surroundings from the cenotes. And here, this image, it shows you why we get this dappled light, why we get these light beams. It's actually because the sun is streaming through the jungle canopy, which is breaking up the light and forming these fingers of light. And unlike in the ocean, because the water is very still, we don't have dancing sunbeams. They're really pretty static, which means you can get away with these lower shutter speeds. And again, using strobes to fill in the balanced light to light up our diver and light up some of these limestone rocks. These rocks are the big rocks that have fallen in and from the cenote opening forming. So I'm hired to shoot divers in the cenotes and more these days cave diving. And sometimes we go to Angelita or the pit, and we really need the light, the sun to be out. If it's a really overcast day, then my backup plan is I have a 30,000 lumen big blue light, and I actually have a diver hiding up out of the frame, shining the 30,000 lumen big blue straight down, and basically replacing the sun. So if I didn't have the lighting diver there, and I only had the light coming from the strobes into the frame, it would be a very flat image. We need that ambient light or the video light to act as ambient light to give us some depth to the image. I also take the video light to the pit in case we lose the light there. And one day I just had a crazy idea of like, well, we do have the light beams, but what if we actually had the video light as well? So I asked Julia to do some halo lighting, and she looked at me like, halo lighting? I was like, yeah, come on, let's try it. And so she's hiding behind the diver with the video light, doing backlighting, but we've also got the sunbeams. So that's the cenotes. The other thing, obviously, I do a lot of is cave diving. This is the guys from XCCR. I do some commercial work for scuba brands and stuff like that. This is the Blue Abyss in Mexico. So it's another sinkhole, but it's inside a cave. So it doesn't have access to the surface, but the roof has collapsed, and it goes all the way down to 60 meters and beyond. These guys are all on rebreathers. Unfortunately, I'm on open circuit in this shot, so I'm hovering shallower. But they've each got powerful video light, or these two have powerful video lights, and this guy's got is filming video, has got video lights on the camera. So one technique we can use in the caves is to have our divers carry video lights, off-camera lights. Another technique we can use is to use off-camera strobes. So as Pete mentioned, we need to trigger those off-camera strobes by having strobes on the camera. So the off-camera strobes have a sensor. They see the strobe on the camera fire, and it triggers the off-camera strobes. It's quite a good technique, but Julia really hates it. I give her two strobes, one facing away from her and one facing directly towards her. So she's swimming around in the cave perfectly happily, and then suddenly I take a picture and she's like, and swimming around for the next 30 seconds seeing stars. So not one of her favorite techniques. Next slide. One of my early attempts at using off-camera lighting. These are fairly modest video lights. So you can see one is hidden in the background there behind the formation, and there is another one around the corner facing that way, just to give us some depth in the image, and then on-camera strobes to light up the cave formations and our diver. So placing lights in the cave, it's not something I'm entirely comfortable with. I do it occasionally. So this is a more sophisticated attempt. I have a 30,000 big blue behind the diver and two 15,000s, one either side, hidden behind the formations. All the off-camera light is coming towards the camera. So our initial inclination would be to put it going into the cave, but we actually want it coming towards the camera, and we want the shadows from it on the camera side. If we have all the light going away from the camera, everything looks really flat. It looks like a passport photo. All the shadows are hidden behind the things that are casting the shadows. We want the shadows actually on this side. And then a little bit of strobe light to fill in. But my favorite technique, my go-to technique, is to use a lighting diver. So for me, cave diving photography is very much a team effort. It requires, obviously, me to take the pictures. I require a decent diver to act as the model. And then I have a third diver who is hiding behind the model and shining a light towards the camera. And basically, we're playing hide and seek. So I don't want to see them the whole dive, and I don't want to see their video light. So they need to hide the video light behind the diver, and they need to disappear basically into the background. And again, I'm using very soft strobe light to fill in from the front. But we want the light coming towards the camera, and then we get the light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. We get the textures. We get shadows on the camera side, and it gives us that depth in the image that we need. Similar image, but shooting up towards the ceiling. We obviously have these very delicate formations in the ceiling. This is one of the reasons I'm not so keen on swimming off the line and placing lights. When we're swimming along the lights, our bubbles are hitting the ceiling, and it's where people have been before. As soon as we move off the line, our bubbles could now be hitting the ceiling for the first time and could be causing damage. And as Pete mentioned, we need to be very careful when we're placing lights that we're not damaging formations. And also, we can cause, just putting a light down can cause this puff of silt that can really start to get in our images. This is a shot of Ellen from before we started the Shun and Ha project. And I also like to really I like to think of it putting the diver in the pocket. I like to find some negative space to put our diver. We then have them backlit to separate them from the background. You know, a diver in a black wetsuit, a black dry suit on a black background doesn't really stand out. And we have that light coming towards the camera to give us the light, dark, light, dark. And in this case, just a real kiss of light from the strobes, just to give a little bit of fill. And this image just really worked really well in black and white. It's sometimes for wreck shots, cave shots, an image can really pop in black and white. And usually it's because there's textures and a lot of contrast in the image. Hello, hello. More close-up image of the diver, and obviously a lot more light coming in from the strobes. So less of a halo effect, but we do have this blue, this nice blue background for the diver. Another shot of Ellen. Another thing I really like to do is environmental portraits. So getting up a bit closer to the diver, showing divers, cave divers in the cave diving, doing what they really love. And I really like it when we can see the eyes of the diver. When we can see a face, we can make a connection. And the other thing that I really love, I'm involved in, is kind of documentation projects. This was one of my early, it's not a particularly great picture, but one of my early efforts helping David Mayor, who was document his mapping project at Taj Mahal. This is a shot with Christine. She was doing a project documenting damage being done to the caves by divers. So we can see a whole heap of broken stuff that's never going to grow back. That's really heartbreaking. From the Shun and Ha project, my partner Julia, squeezing through a restriction, I just had to shove the camera in there next to her and take a shot blind, but it came out pretty well. And Ellen, again, Shun and Ha project, one of the challenges when we're shooting exploration projects and stuff, obviously these guys are prepared to do a little bit of lighting for me on the way in, but when they're actually exploring and looking for leads, they don't want anything to do with me anymore. And I'm trying to take pictures without any off-camera lighting. And as you can see, we're really lacking light in the background, but lit up these beautiful formations with the on-camera lighting. Another technique I use for exploration projects and stuff, they're going to be exploring on the way in, laying line, looking for leads, but I know on the way out that they're going to be surveying that line. So they need to measure the length of each section of line, take bearings and distance markers at each tie-off, and write all that information down. So I can get ahead of them and drop a light somewhere, or put a light up in the ceiling, and wait for them to come back, and then I can at least get some shots there with some light in the background. I generally When I'm shooting the caves, always on the line. My divers are always on the line. The one time I kind of break that rule is when we are pushing into a new cave. Obviously, I'm a little bit ahead of Julia here, but so I'm actually the first person that's been in that section of cave at that moment. And obviously, I'm only going to do this with people that I really trust. So if we have a complete zero-vis wipeout, that I know Julia's going to come and look for me before she skedaddles. I hope. Same thing with Tamara. She was the push diver in the other section of the Shunanha project, diving in the rebreather. And again, I'm ahead of Tamara here off the line. And one of the real challenges of shooting in caves that haven't been dived before is that we get a lot of percolation, we get a lot of silt. None of this stuff's been disturbed before. Same, this is Amoke and Laszlo in the background doing backlighting from their Oshbelhar exploration project. So I did some documentation for them, and I think we had some images in depth. Really beautiful cave. But the moment you stop, the bubbles are hitting the ceiling, you're starting to get percolation, you're starting to get like chunks of stuff falling down. It makes it very, very challenging to get pictures. I tried my technique of dropping some lights because I knew they would be coming back this way, but even just very carefully placing the lights, just silt just everywhere. I mean, it looks kind of cool, like a sea fog rolling in, but within minutes, the visibility in that room is just gone. So it's very challenging. So sometimes you just need to embrace the percolation and the darkness and treat it as sparkles. I think there's one more. And yes, Laszlo, the more modern way of surveying the line using them in Nemo, it will, you run it through the line, it measures the line, and you press a button, and it takes the heading and the depth at each station. So a much quicker way to do it. So that's me. Thanks to some of my sponsors. And yes, thank you very much.